adjust here and there. Everything is adjustable, so adjust it. Body, or maybe you can begin to adjust your breath, find the breath that make the body comfortable. Thinking of the chanting that we usually chant, may you look after yourself with peace. May you look after yourself with ease. What does it mean? Nobody can look after us with ease. We have to do it ourselves. We chant, we recite every time when we chant, every morning, every night. And I think this is an expression of the goodwill, looking after yourself. Refer to both your physical and your mental well-being. Physically, may you be healthy, or if your health is bad, may it be a sort of problem that we know how to take care of. I don't think it's required too much effort. The most important is that we want to learn how to look after our mind with ease. So that the issues in the mind are not a constant struggle. And we don't need to be depending on other people to solve our problem. We also want to be able to see a problem comes up in the mind. Also to have another part of the mind that can look at it and see what's wrong, recognize what's wrong, and we can come up with antidote. All this requires training, a lot of training, a lot of looking after our mind. Basically meaning knowing how to talk to ourselves. Like right now, we are sitting here, getting the mind to settling down, which requires that we do a certain amount of talking to ourselves. We want to do in a way that's skillful, that actually does bring the mind to a quieter state where we can pull all that chatter aside. In the awakening stage, we talk to to the mind is very necessary. Don't think of it as an unfortunate obstacle as you are trying to get the mind concentrated. It is an essential part of the concentration that you can learn how to rope in the mind's thoughts and gather them in a closer and closer and closer to sense of the stillness. So right now, talk to yourself about the breath. Like, how is the breath going? Is it comfortable? Where do you feel the breath right now? When you breathe in, does it feel like you are fully nourishing your whole body all the way? Is it nourishing the nerves? Is it nourishing even our eyes that we closed, ears? Think of the breath as the flow of the energy in the body. You can ask yourself where it would feel good for that flow to go. Then, once it feels good, ask yourself how you can make it spread so that it suffuses the entire body with a sense of well-being. That is a very skilled way of talking to yourself. Then you can begin to notice what point the breath is as good as it's going to be, and it is good enough to settle down with. That's when you put the inner chatter aside and just flow into the breath. But to know when that point is, that requires you talk to yourself. So this is some skillful way of talking to yourself to get the mind to settle down. There are many times when you are not in the formal meditation. You need to know how to talk to the mind, especially when you are getting obsessed with something that's really not good for you. Hear your internal chatter can be informed by some reflection on what the Buddhas have to say about the right speech, Begin with the right speech, going out of the right resolve, as we chanted. Resolve for renunciation, resolve for non-ill will, resolve for harmlessness. In terms of renunciation, if you will find that the mind is getting obsessed with a sensual pressure, sensual object, or ideas, desire, how do you talk to it so that it can begin to admit that you don't really need those things. Otherwise, the mind will keep saying, I need this pressure, I need that pressure. I cannot stand not having it. Sometimes we have to learn how to counter that justification, because after all, we don't really need this thing, right? We can survive perfectly well without them. These are real pressure that the mind can feed on, like the pressure of the good breathing that will nourish in a much more substantial way. And for a non-ill will, we don't usually think that we have ill will for ourselves. But if you find yourself thinking about giving up on the practice, you have to ask yourself, do you really love yourself? After all, you started this practice because you realized that you were causing yourself unnecessary suffering. And this is the path out of that suffering. We are staying on the path that out of suffering. Why would you want to give up? If you really love yourself, you would not think of abandoning it. The same with the resolve on the harmlessness. We don't like to think that we would harm ourselves, but we keep doing things that we are really stupid because we don't really care about the consequences. We always say, let the consequences take care of themselves. I'm going to do what I feel like doing right now. That's it's really apathy, and it is a way of harming ourselves. We have got to think down the line. Remember the Buddha say, ask yourself what would be for long-term welfare and happiness. When you find yourself tempted to give in to desire to do or say or think something that you know would be bad for you, ask yourself, how will I feel tomorrow from having done this? Remember the times we were able to say no to ourselves and how much better it feels in the next day. And I think this some of the lesson from right resolve, which are also the lesson from right effort, right patience, knowing how we motivate ourselves to keep on going on the path. Remember, the Buddha has a list of what the Buddha called three governing principles, which are the different ways of motivating ourselves to stick with the practice. First is there is the Dhamma as governing principle. It reflects on what a good Dhamma, how it's hard to find an honest Dhamma like this, and why be ashamed to wander away from it. In this case, you use a sense of inspiration to keep you going. This governing principle is based on a sense of appreciation, sense of uh, sense of gratitude to the Buddha for having taught this excellent Dhamma. Then there is the self as a governing principle. This connect with the question that I just mentioned earlier. Do you really love yourself? You see that you are suffering, and a lot of the suffering comes from you. All the unnecessary suffering come from our action. So when are we going to stop? If we put it off to some other lifetime or sometime later in this lifetime, it will not get easier with the time. If we are going to love ourselves, talk to ourselves in a way that keep us going right now. This is a common principle is based on goodwill. The next one, like based on the sense of shame, and I think the Buddhas call this one in the world as a governing principle. We remind ourselves that there are people in the world who can read other people's mind. Suppose they were to read our mind right now, what would they think? Wouldn't you be ashamed if they saw the unskillful thought that we are feeding on right now? Once the Buddha said the thing that we would talk about would have to be first, is it true? Second, is it beneficial? And three, is it timely? I think we can apply this to our thoughts too. Because things come up in the mind. Ask yourself, is it really true? Some part of the mind may be say, yes, is it really true? But you have to question them. To what extent is the opposite true? What happened if we think in that opposite way, which leads in the better direction? Before you all open up your eyes, share your merit from meditation practice to all being. May all being be wealthy. May all being be healthy. May all being be prosperity. May all being be free from animosity, be free from difficulties, be free from all kinds of suffering. Sappe satta avera hotu, apaya pacha hotu, anika hotu, sukhi atanang pariharantu. Thank you for joining this class. I wish you all happy Valentine's Day and have a good night. We'll see you next time.